So we'll be talking about the victims of the kidnapping and the enforced disappearance, the different parties that commit these crimes and they deprive the victims from medical care, and they also deny them the rights that are prescribed in the Yemeni laws and legislations to be presented before a court and a judge. So the Association of the Mothers of the Abductees was established from family members of the victims and activists. The association has worked actually to document and monitor all these violations, and this monitoring work was followed by issuing different reports and activities. In our today's session, which we hope to contribute to providing justice to the victims and to shed light actually on the light, to shed light about the situation of the abductees and the enforced disappearance victims, and to prevent impunity. We'll be hosting in this session Mr. Madram Abu Siraj, who was abducted by the security belt in Aden, Mr. Yusuf Ajlan, who was an abductee with the Houthis, and we also have Mr. Hamid Dawoodi, who was also an abductee with the Houthis. Welcome, Mr. Madram. Peace be upon you, and Ramadan Kareem to all of you. Mr. Madram, can you introduce yourself and tell us what happened to you in May 2021? Please, you have the floor. So these days, Ramadan actually in 2021, and in particular, it was the 20th of Ramadan, I was arrested. And before I talk about my arrest, I want to say that I was not arrested by the security belt. I was arrested by the Al-Asifa forces of Al-Anshali. And this is special intelligence forces that are reporting to the STC directly and its chairman. On the 20th of Ramadan in 2021, I had an interview with a French delegation at Crown Hotel in Khor Maksum. My name is Madram Abu Siraj. I'm the head of the political bureau of the Southern Revolutionary Iraq. After we finished the meeting, actually, it was about 1 a.m. And before I arrived to my house, I live in Tawahi in Hujayf, roundabout. Actually, I was followed by military vehicles, and they abducted me. And on that day, I had with me Mr. Ala Al-Ghoba, who is the manager of the legal affairs in the Ministry of Transportation. And after 3 or 4 days, Ala was released, and I was kept in the dungeons for about 15 months and 17 days. So for a year and 3 months, I have not seen the sun. And I have not seen anyone actually. I was in a cell. They moved me in 4 prisons. Actually, the worst of them was the 3rd one, and I was kept in a basement actually, and that basement was terrible. Actually, the conditions were squalid. And a very small space actually, so it is 120 centimeters long, and the width was about 2 meters, and the ceiling was very low. I could not stand actually up, so I spent 7 months in that cell in that basement. I have not seen anyone actually. When they were interrogating me, they would blindfold me and handcuff me. And when I was in the basement, actually, they bring me food. So the soldiers will come masked. And then they moved me to different prisons. that are not less worse than that basement. But I have not seen anyone actually. I have not seen a person. So I have not seen the sun as well. So I spent months in that basement, and in that cell, actually, I would eat, sleep, pray, and in the first 57 days of my abduction or arrest, I was not allowed actually to take a shower, and I was very smelly then. So, and when the interrogators would come to interrogate me, actually, they would bring air refresheners with them, or air fresheners, in order not to be harmed by my smell. Actually, I was very smelly, and when they started to allow me to take a bath, actually, they brought me a bucket of water inside this basement, so I would wash inside this cell. I was arrested actually many times. I was arrested when Saleh was the president, because I was active in 98, 97, and I was arrested 6 more times between 27 to 2011. But that was very different actually. The presence of Saleh, if we compare them to the presence of the STC, the presence of Saleh would seem to me as five-star hotels. Actually, they humiliated everyone. Actually, I did not hear the voice. I heard the voices of other prisoners. Actually, the first thing they do to you is to humiliate you. When they started interrogating me, actually, it was on the eve of the day. It was the 30th of Ramadan, the eve of the Eid, and when they finished the interrogation process, actually, they left me inside the basement for 17 days, handcuffed in a basement, handcuffed for 17 days. Actually, I was not allowed to bath. I was shitting myself, actually. And imagine how was I doing all these things, and how I was eating. And excuse us, Mr. Madram, actually, because of this, but we just wanted to know what were the detention conditions, what were they for you and for others like you, actually. It's the first time I talk about it, actually. It's the first time I see it. They have taken videos, actually. Confessing that I am an agent for the Iranians, for the Omanis, for the Iranians, and even for the Saudis, actually. They extracted videos and confessions from my side, and saying that I have done this and that to women, different women. So, the friends of my daughter, actually, and the friends of my sisters. So if I tell you what happened to me, actually, they said that they will publish these things, and the Office of the High Commissioner, they know about it, actually. And when I resumed my activities, actually, they sent to me some of these videos on my mobile, actually, and more than 41 videos were recorded for me giving confessions, some of them about immoral acts, some of them are about political things, that I was a traitor and I'm an agent. So these are very unethical and immoral practices that they have done to us. And I'm telling you that the dungeons and the cells I stayed in actually were supervised and monitored by UAE, and the instructions and directions were coming directly from Idros Zubaydi and from UAE. And the first question they asked me actually was that you have banned the UAE flag. I did not ban the flag, but I have organized some events to express solidarity with Palestine, actually. And then I had to confess, actually, that I burned the flag of UAE, although I didn't. And that was the first question, actually, they asked me. The first thing was that the reason for my incarceration was that I have organized a protest against UAE. And they had all the information, actually, about me, and the French delegation can confirm that I have discussed with the French delegation the assassinations of the religious leaders and the innocent people in Aden, I I have told the French delegation that they have arrested the killers of Al Sheikh Al Adani, one of the prominent people who was assassinated, and they told me that I have crossed the red line because of all these things. There are two things actually that were very important for them: the UAE flag and the killing of the imams. And I can testify actually about that before any judge. Actually, they were telling me what they have done to the imams, and they were telling me that I will have the same fate as them. Mr. Madram, if we ask you a question, actually, were there any legal actions taken against you? Did you present any complaints? Actually, it's the first time I speak out about these things because my family left Aden. Actually, they were threatening me and blackmailing me because my family was in Aden, and they had videos for me giving confessions, wrong confessions, actually, many things that I have signed. And in the third or the fourth prison, actually, they moved me to. There are dozens of disappeared persons, actually, and they cannot see each other. And you can only hear their voices, actually, when they open the doors and they give them the food, and when they remove, actually, the waste, the human waste. And some of the cells, for example, had doors, so they open these doors and give them the food. But others, they have small openings, and they give them the food through these openings. Actually, they see nothing in these cells. Actually, they just open the door to remove your stool, your feces, and your urine. Actually, they give us a bag, for the feces, and they give us a bottle, actually, for the urine. We we were praying in our own urine, actually, and we were not allowed to wash. And it was in Ramadan, believe it. Actually, this happened. I'm swearing by God that this happened. Actually, even ablution or bathing was not allowed. You would be allowed to take a bath every 15 days for 2 minutes only, just 2 minutes. Mr. Madram, so I'm telling all these things actually in brief. I'm very concise. I will need hours and hours to tell you what happened to me, actually, but I'm trying to be very brief. Yes, I am a political activist, but the first work that I wanted to do is to support the disappeared persons with ISIS, with Al Qaeda, with the Houthis, whoever. They need to be brought to justice for the forced disappearance. This is something that has to be rejected by everyone. And these things were done before 1990, and they are doing them again now, especially in Aden. Sadly, I'm telling you that, and until now, yes, I'm struggling for the restoration of the state of the South, but not under the current mentalities in the mindset. You said, Mr. Madram, that the soldiers who communicated with you were masked actually, and you did not see their faces. Do you think that these things they do them for impunity to avoid punishment, so they are not sued and they are not prosecuted, so their identities are not known? Do you think that this is the reason for this masking? Yes, yes, it is that they are hiding themselves in order not to be identified. If they were security people, they would have identified themselves. They are gangs actually, and the gangs they conceal and hide themselves. And now you can go, for example, to the main street of Madram, and you will see masked people actually on the street. These are the forces that are doing these works, especially the forces of Awsan al-Anshali. Actually, I'm telling you that Awsan al-Anshali can never have impunity and can never escape punishment. So Awsan al-Anshali is doing all these things, and all the prisoners who were in the hands of the coalition, they were transferred to Awsan al-Anshali. Uh, what we want from you now is to tell us, do you have the readiness actually to give up your case and to provide a waiver? Will you stay on the struggle actually and try to yes, I'm in communication with courts in France actually and with relevant organizations, and they want you to help us on this. I will not give up my rights actually because this is not my right. This is the right of Aden. This is the right of my family. This is the right of the people of Yemen and the South. So this is right for humanity. Thank you very much, Mr. Madram Abu Siraj, and for your information as part of the things that occurred to the abductees and the disappeared persons. We mentioned Madram Abu Siraj case, and in our report, Justice for Abductees, we mentioned his case. Thank you, Mr. Madram. And we are on the side of the victims, actually, who do not give up their rights and those who want to prevent impunity. So thank you, Mr. Madram Abu Siraj. I will move now to Mr. Jalal al-Din al-Khawlani. Hello, Mr. Jalal. Mr. Jalal, introduce yourself first and then tell us what happened to you. It was very painful what I have heard from Mr. Madram. It was moved actually. And, my name is Jalaluddin Muhammad Al Khawlani. I am a human rights activist and a researcher, and I am an advisor to the UNDP, and I am a manager of a civil society organization. And I was abducted on the 23rd of July 2021 in Taiz, when I was visiting Taiz actually for Al-Adha Eid. And I had with me a friend, and we went to Al-Qahira Castle in Taiz actually, and I was stopped by a vehicle. Mr. Jalal, if you try to bring the mic closer to you for the sound, and please slow down. Oh, can you hear me now? Yes. Well, I was arrested. A vehicle, military vehicle, and motorcycles. I have seen them. They have arrested me and they pointed their guns at us. I asked them, "Who are you?" They said, we are from the commandment of the axes, and we are arresting you. They were masked, and they handcuffed me, and they released my friend. Actually, they did not keep him. So we drove with them to Wadi Al Qadi roundabout, to an area called Al Rawda, and they brought me inside a villa. We arrived there before sunset, and they said to me that you have to wait for the officer to come. I spent about 5 or 6 hours until around midnight, and then someone whose name is Osama Al-Qardai came in. He's an officer in Brigade 170 Air Defense, and another person whose name was Muhammad Mustafa and Hisham Al-Qiyadi. So these three individuals, they came in, they said, you are an activist and there is a report about you. Why have you come to Taiz? Actually, you work for organizations, you work with the UN. I told them yes. And they said, we have orders actually to apprehend you. I asked them who issued the orders. They told me it's not your business. So they have taken my mobiles, of course, and all my belongings. And they asked Mustafa, this Mustafa, he had papers, and he said, we will start interrogating you and talking to you. And we want you, we will not beat you and we will not torture you. We'll just ask you questions and you respond openly and candidly. I refused, actually. I said to them, if you want me to respond to your questions, it has to be before a judge or a prosecution. So then he was angry, this Mustafa. So they left the room, and new people came in, others came in. They have taken me outside and they removed all my clothes, actually, the underwear only. And then they brought me to a very dark room, and I spent in that room about 30 minutes. And then they came in again and they turned on the light and they said, you will not confess, you will not talk. So we will show you what to do. They said to me that I'm an agent for the Houthis or for UAE. They requested me to open my phones to unlock them. I refused, and then they started beating me. This Hisham, Osama Al-Qardai, and Mustafa, actually, they started beating me with the rifle stops buttons, and they started to beat me. So I had injuries in my backbone because of that, and I have lost conscience for about an hour or more. And then after that, I have seen them playing with my phones, actually using them. And Hisham said to me, okay, we will now, we have found evidence against you. I asked them about this evidence, and then they left, and Hisham stayed in the room, and he told me, if you want us to release you today, okay, you have to pay us. And then he said, okay, you do not want to be released. I asked him about what are the accusations actually against me. They did not respond. They left, and I spent about 2 hours in my place. So it was about 2 a.m. And here starts the suffering. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, about 6 individuals came in. They were armed and gunned, and they blindfolded me and handcuffed me, and they started transferring me, and I was in disappearance for about 60 days after that. So they have carried me to a vehicle, and they were putting their feet on me, and I was laying on the car floor. So they were beating me along the way. I was in pain. I was telling them that I had back issues. I had also some cardiac issues. And because I was screaming and in pain, they bought a plaster on my mouth. And I arrived to an unidentified place, and they carried me for about 20 minutes. And then a room was opened, and they threw me inside this room. And I spent about 2 weeks inside this room. 2 weeks, it was unbearable heat, and I was blindfolded and handcuffed. So they would open it in the evening, just in the evening, to bring some food. And I was very hungry, actually, and they would bring me a bottle of water. So I drink from it and I urinate inside it. And after about 2 weeks, they brought me out this room. They moved me to another prison. I don't know the place, but it was a small room, and the torture started. It was daily torture from the evening until the morning, and they bring to me 4 loaves of bread and one yogurt. So the questions were about that I am an agent for Tariq, for the Houthis, and that I am a mercenary, and that I work with international organizations and all these things. So they would beat me with the electrical wires, and they removed my nails, fingernails, and I was severely beaten, and I have poor sight now in my left eye. It was damaged, my eye, because of the beating and the torture. And they would beat me with their guns, actually, on my knees. And this torture continued for almost a month. That was the physical torture. And the food quantities were very small. And they threatened me that they will rape me, and they removed all my clothes, and they have taken pictures for me naked, and they told me that if I claim for anything, if I speak about what happened to me, that they will release these pictures. And these people who were torturing me, actually, I did not see them, so I cannot identify them. Can you hear me? Yes, please go on. And a month after that, the torture was psychological, actually. So they would tie me to the wall, and they will keep me tied to the wall, naked. And so I cannot sleep, and I cannot. And if I try to sleep, actually, it's cold water that they pour on me and beating with the sticks. And all kinds, actually, of bad words they used against me. So they were telling me that my family has disavowed me. They accused me that I have raped children and that I raped women. And they were telling me very bad things about my colleagues, and they were telling me that they have videos about me, immoral videos, doing this or that. And they told me that if I speak up, if I say anything, they will use all these things against me. And actually, they have, when they use my mobile phones. They have seized all my bank accounts and on Karimi, and they transferred the money to themselves. And then I was handed over to the criminal investigation department in Taz, and I spent about 2 weeks there, and the treatment there was fine, but I was not allowed actually to pray. I was not allowed to use the bathroom actually. So they came in one day, and I was praying actually, and they started to beat me, and they said to me that I am Masonic. How comes I'm praying? So they were, and then when I was moved to the criminal investigation department, I was put in a cell actually, and there was light in it, and they brought me a mattress. In the first prison, actually, there were no mattresses, and it was complete darkness. So I spent about 2 or 3 weeks in that last prison, and they would bring me food in the morning and in the evening, 2 meals a day. And for these 3 weeks, actually, I was knocking on the door of the cell requesting that I am interrogated. And then I went into hunger strike for 2 days, and the prison guard came in, and I was very tired. Actually, I couldn't stand. And he said to me that you have this food, why don't you eat? I told him that I am abducted for almost 2 months. And what's the reason for that? He said to me, I can't tell you anything actually. Then I went into a coma, and then the security manager, Abdullah Saeed Al Wahbani, and others came in, and they were requesting me to eat. I said to them, actually, what is my charge? Why I'm not released? They told me that I was abducted by a group from Brigade 170, and they said that they have evidence against you, and they handed you over to us. And then they have taken me to the hospital, and then I was brought back to prison, and the prison manager told me that if they do not bring the evidence, actually you'll be released. And then they provided me with new clothing, and they allowed me to take showers, and then I started to receive treatment, and then they said to me, well, my car was taken, my gun, and my money, about $14,000 in my account, was confiscated and seized by them. And they were communicating actually also with my friends and my family, and requested payments in order for me to be released. So they defamed me. I was very embarrassed actually before my friends, because they have requested them to transfer money to them. And the charges actually were about immoral acts that I did, and they extracted confiscations from me, and they did not bring back any of my belongings actually that they have seized, including my phones, my watch, and everything. So I sent reports to the Attorney General, to the prosecutors, and I have assigned some lawyers actually to bring up my case, and they have threatened the lawyers, and they are continuing to threaten me if I say anything. They say to me that they will punish me, and that they have recorded videos about me. They tell me that they have recorded videos about me doing this or that. They injected me with some needles, so I was saying things that I did not know about actually. So, okay, Jalal, I will ask you a question, Jalal. Do you think that making these immoral accusations against you, what is the purpose of that? Is it to silence the victim or to prevent any kind of solidarity with the victim so the victim is abandoned by others? What is the purpose of these accusations, actually, these immoral accusations against the abductees and the disappeared persons? We in Yemen, we are a conservative society, and we care about traditions and customs. And I believe this is in order to destroy the victim. So if I accuse Shawqi Saeed al-Makhlafi, actually, he said that we have arrested Jalal and he did this and that. He said that we have arrested Jalal and he was raping a child when we arrested him. He said that actually, and if I am a criminal, I'm supposed to be brought before a judge actually, and if I have done anything, they should have prosecuted me, and they could have hanged me. I would accept that, and so my friends were telling me that this Shawqi was telling them that he has a video for me raping a child and doing this or that. So I have asked them, have you seen anything like that? Actually, we want to see these videos and the immoral charges are a cover for them actually, because we in Yemen and in Arab countries, we are conservative societies. And when the person is slandered actually, and when the person is tainted morally, actually, he is finished in the society. So I'd like to thank many of the civil society organizations that were our advocates. When I was released from prison, actually, they communicated with me. And the first of them was the Mothers of the Abductees Association. And until today, I am receiving psychological support and treatment. So I cannot, for example, sleep at night. And I have some physical and medical conditions, and I have liver conditions and heart condition. And my immunity is very poor now because of the poor feeding and the torture. So they wanted me to give them money, and they said to me that I have been working with international organizations for more than 12 years and that I have a lot of money and that I should pay them. Thank you, Jalal. I will ask you another question. So you were abducted by a group, the brigade, this brigade, and then you were transferred actually to the security organization that is under the state. So these security organizations, did they take any legal action against those who abducted you? Well, the situation in Taiz is very different. This gang that abducted me, actually, they have also abducted a police officer and a head of a police station. So the security departments in Taiz, they have interrogated me and they have documented my case and they have a file about me. They gave me this copy of the file. And when I communicated with the Attorney General, actually, he communicated with the Chief Prosecutor, and the Chief Prosecutor issued instructions to the Criminal Investigation Department, and they have arrest warrants against the people who abducted me, but nothing happened. And there was a mediation committee, actually a group of individuals and the sheikhs. They requested me to assign the case to waive it up, and that they will give me my personal belongings plus $20,000 for the treatment, and that they will rehabilitate me. I refused that And when I refused, they told me that I have to leave to leave Yemen entirely, otherwise they cannot protect me. So I left Yemen, but they are still threatening me and blackmailing me with the pictures they have and the videos, actually. But I will not waive up my rights, and I will continue my struggle with your help, with the help of Ms. Aisha and yourself. I will raise this case to international fora, and I will go to international courts with your help. Thank you, Jalal. Actually, we are extending our hands to all the victims who want their rights to be protected and to hold accountable all the perpetrators. These are your rights, actually, and we will support you to prevent any kind of impunity, and we will continue to demand that these perpetrators are tried and are prosecuted. Thank you, Jalaluddin Al-Khawlani. And for your information, we have mentioned the case of Jalaluddin Al-Khawlani in our report of 2021 about the torture and ill treatment. And these sessions, Jalaluddin, these sessions are helping people to heal, actually. When you speak about what happened to you, this helps you to heal, actually, but not change anything and keeping everything inside you is problematic. And I advise you to use psychosocial help. This is very important for you in order to recover. The victims, they have to go to seek psychological support, because it's not easy what happened to you, actually, and it's not easy to treat all these things, because you will require some support sessions and things like that. So we will support you, and we will support all the victims, actually, who suffer the pain. Thank you, Jalaluddin Al-Khawlani. We have now Mr. Yusuf Ajlan, and he was abducted by the Houthi group. Can you hear me? Yes. Please introduce yourself and tell us what happened to you. We can't hear him, actually. My name is Yusuf Ajlan. I'm a journalist, and I was detained. We can't hear you, Yusuf. Miss Najla, others can hear me, actually. Yusuf, please move to the Arabic channel and mute the original audio. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can. Please. My name is Yusuf Ajlan. I'm a journalist, and I was detained by the Houthi militia for 14 months, and I was arrested on the 13th of October 2016 until November 2017. And it's difficult, actually, to talk about what happened to us during this detention, because I will need hours and hours to talk about a small portion of the suffering we had in these prisons. When I talk about my detention and my story, it has been a year and 2 months with physical and psychological torture. But there are many people who are detained, abducted by the Houthis. I left actually prison after 14 months, but others are still in the prison. They spent more than 8 years in prison and they are still there. And for many of the journalists, actually, they were released after many, many years of incarceration, and some of the journalists are still in prison. So journalists are the enemies to the Houthis, actually. They are their first enemies before the combatants in the field. And this was said actually by the leader of the militia, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, and others. So they consider journalists as their first enemy. And in the interrogations, our interrogators, they were telling us actually that we are their key enemies, and that anyway, I'll try to be brief. I suffered a lot like those who spoke before me. Maybe the physical and the psychological torture is quite similar. And those who abduct people and hide them and they torture them, all of them, they are masked. They cover their faces for the victims not to identify them. And this is the approach that is being followed by all these groups. During my detention, I was tortured. I was hanged, and it was hanged to the ceiling actually, and they used some dirty methods that are very painful and that can have consequences on your health. Actually, I'm still having pain in my neck and in my back because of the torture. In addition to that, there was the psychological torture, and I am still suffering from the consequences of that. I presented myself to psychiatrists, but I'm still having the impacts and the effects of that torture. Because the psychological torture will continue with you for years and days, actually. And the psychological torture adds up to your physical pain. I have seen more than one doctor, and I'm still having the effects of the psychological torture. So they were threatening us that they will kill us, for example. I'm blindfolded, they torture us, and they tell us that they will kill us at any moment, and they can kill your family members. So the worst thing for me, the most painful thing for me, was that they tell us, for example, that we will take your family members, we'll take your daughter, actually, who's a child of 2 years old, we will kill her, we will kill your brother, we will kill your father, things like that. Houthi militia, they have used with me and with others. Actually, I'm the luckiest person because I spent over a year in the prison, and the physical torture was for 28 days only. And there was a kind of pressure that resulted in me being transferred to another prison. I was in the criminal investigation department in Sana'a, and my family actually went to different sheikhs and social figures to press the Houthis to release me. And this, so I was continuously beaten for hours in the beginning, actually, and I was blindfolded. So they come in and they change actually the people who were torturing and beating me. And on the last day, I had one of the interrogators in the first prison. He asked them, "Are you finished with him or not?" Actually, we are under pressure from people outside the prison, actually, to find a solution for him or to release him. And one day after that, they moved me to a Thawra reserve prison. I was remanded there, and they tried to engage me in a terrorist cell, actually, and they are still imprisoning them. So there are, I have never seen these individuals, for example, which they accuse me of being a culprit with. So I they I was arrested actually before that time, but I was released very quickly. And they were saying to me that I have arms and that I work with Ali Mohsen and his brigade, and they were telling me that I was communicating with people in Marib. And then they moved me to a Thawra prison. I spent 2 months there, and then to the political prison, the political security prison. I spent 5 months there. And then the last prison was the military police prison. And then after that, I was released because of a mediation that was led by Sheikh Naji Murait, who we have here. So I'd like to thank him for that. And it's very difficult to tell you what happened to us or to me. But I want to tell you something. Sadly, actually, the war caused destruction and people were killed. But the people who were mostly affected by this conflict is the abductees and their family members. Because of my abduction, for example, I had my father actually physically collapsed. He was in good health actually, but I was imprisoned for 14 months, and then they allowed me to stay in Sana'a for 5 days because I was swabbed in a prisoner's swab. So when I left the prison, when I saw my father, actually, he was a totally different person. He was frail. He had a cardiac attack, and this led to his death during the coronavirus pandemic because his body collapsed and his immunity was poor, and he died because of the coronavirus. So I hold myself responsible for the death of my father. I had the opportunity to leave Sana'a directly, but I wanted to stay and to spend my life with my family. And I wanted to stop my work as a journalist in order to stay with the family. But the Houthis did not allow me to do that, actually. And my father could not bear it, actually, during my incarceration. So he collapsed physically. And part of the suffering of my father was because of my detention and because the Houthis exiled me. If I ask you a question, Mr. Yusuf, he does not hear the question. I came today from the hospital. I'm outside Yemen. I'm living outside Yemen, and I am away from my family since 2017. I can go back to Marib or to Sayoun to meet my family, but my large family in Sana'a, I cannot see them. And so I'm not allowed to go back to the country and see my family. So I frequently visit hospitals, and the last time actually was today, and the doctor told me that I have frail health, poor health because of the detention, and I'm being treated now for many diseases that I did not have in the past. Mr. Yusuf, can you hear us? So I have seen many of the ex-detainees, and they are still suffering from the effects of their detention. The Houthi militia actually they used very dirty methods for the people who are released of their prisons not to continue their normal lives, for example. So people, their relations changed actually with others. The ex-detainees, they have now different relations with others, and they are isolated, more isolated. So they do not talk to the people, they do not socialize, and they cannot go and see people. So, so it is about terrifying. It's terrifying us, and many of the ex-detainees actually they still have concerns about their families, and they do not to say anything actually. I stopped, for example, writing on social media, and I stopped appearing on media because there are still threats to my family. If I appear in any TV channel, for example, or if I write any post on my social media account, actually, I'm under threats, and my family would call me. Actually, my brother would call me in Sana'a from Sana'a and will say to me that the Houthis they have contacted us and they are threatening us. So you have to stop writing. I'm a journalist, and they have worked as a journalist for more than 10 years, and they cannot work as a journalist because the Houthis are threatening my family. Mr. Yusuf, if I ask you a question, do you think that you were lucky actually in comparison to others actually who are still in detention, or those who suffered some cruel treatment? So was Yusuf the least tortured one, probably because of the mediations that happened? Yes, I uh, I was very lucky actually, and I have seen many people who were detained and released, and I consider myself as the luckiest of them all actually, because I was very lucky. I was tortured for 30 days, but others were tortured for much longer actually. I very much feel that I'm lucky because I was tortured the least of them all, and I was released after 14 months, and I suffered less than others. Yes, I confess that. Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. And well, in fact, it's very painful. These abductees we hosted today, Mr. Madram Siraj, Geraldine Khawlani, and Yusuf. Actually, their suffering is probably less than others. There are others who are in the dungeons for the 8th year now. We hope that this misery is over and that they are released and that families are reunioned. We start now receiving the questions or the comments. If you want to have the floor, please raise your hand. Miss Noura Al-Jirwi, you have the floor. Well, please, 2 minutes for each intervention. Nora, please use the Arabic channel. Can you hear me? Yes. First of all, Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. It's very painful what we heard today. Those who were imprisoned by the Houthis and others, and the terrifying and the suffering they had. And in this hearing is very important, and I'd like to thank the association and all those actually who organized similar sessions for the world to know what happened to those who were imprisoned by the Houthis. I also heard for the first time from Jalaluddin and others, and this is good actually to know more about these cases. I can only express my solidarity with all of them, and I hope that we as civil society organizations, we work together in order to help the victims of these abductions and incarcerations. Thank you. Thank you, Noura. And we wanted to draw your attention that we have today abductees and detainees with different parties. Madram Abu Siraj was detained by the STC forces. Jalaluddin Al Khawlani was detained by the parties in control in Taiz, actually. And Mr. Yusuf was detained by the Houthis. Ms. Nabila Farah. Can you hear me? Yes, Ms. Nabila, please use Arabic. Can you hear me? Miss Nabila, please fix the channel. The line is breaking. We can't hear her. There is no sound.
أستاذ نجلة صوتك الآن تمام.
I did not hear Nabila actually, so we will move to a different person. Okay, anyone, do you have any questions or comments or interventions, please? We have Sheikh Najim Rait, one of the mediators, and Mr. Ghazi Sama'i from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and we have Ms. Maha Awad. So if you want to say something. So whoever wants to say something, please open your mic. Mr. Najim Rait, he raised his hand, but he's on mute.
أستاذ ناجي ممكن تفتح الصوت؟ تفضل الآن. تمام.
Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you, Naji. Yes. Anyway, happy Ramadan to all of you.
تفضل يا أستاذ.
So, as if you are following up on those who left the prison, actually, but there are still people inside the prison, and you have to work on releasing those who are inside prisons, and so you have to focus on what you should do in the future and not the past, actually, because when you talk about these things, they make things harder to those who are still in prison. Anyway, we have the prisoners committee from the government and from the Houthi side. These committees actually they identify those who they want to release, but there are others actually, as if they are not Yemenis. There are many people in prison, and they do not put them as part of the lists actually for the exchange and for the swabs. So last night I talked to Ali Al-Qa'um, who is a member of the political bureau of Ansarullah. We told him that there are many detainees on your side and on the side of the government, and no one is talking about them actually, and they need to be released. So they just demand for those who they want to be released. So there are individuals who are independent. For example, they are not affiliated with any party, and no one is demanding for their release. So we have made some progress with Mr. Ali Al-Qahom, and he has a green light from Mr. Abdul Malik that these prisoners should be released. Some of them spent 7 years, some of them 8 years. And for the prisoners committee, actually, they are interfering in the business of the judiciary and the judges. So we contacted Abdul Qadir al-Murtada, and we launched a campaign against him that he is interfering in the business of courts. And they asked how. So we said that because we have court rulings that some of the detainees should be released, and they were not released. Why? Because Abdul Qadir al-Murtada wants to swap them. with prisoners on the other side, and they have court rulings to be released actually, and therefore this person is interfering in the business of courts and judiciary, and that he is above courts. So Mr. Abdul Malik assigned Ali Al-Quhum to just focus on the issues of the detainees. So a committee will be established, and in 2 days' time, they will go to Marib and they will meet with the government side. And I believe that the issue of the detainees will be resolved based on that. So this is what I wanted to say. You have to work on releasing the detainees who are still in prison actually. For those who already left the prison, actually, we should not open their cases. We need to be silent in order for us to be able to release other detainees. Thank you, Sheikh Naji, and we appreciate mediators and their role actually, but we have a different opinion. We see that the swabs themselves are crimes against the civilian abductees because these people are abducted and if they are detained because of suspicions, there are 24 hours for interrogation, and within 7 days they need to be referred to a prosecutor. But to keep these people for 7 years in order to be swabbed with other prisoners of war, this is a crime against them. We are talking today about cases and crimes that the statute of limitations does not apply to. It is enforced disappearance, it's the ill treatment, it's the torture, all these things. So the rights of these people are imprescriptible and they should be protected. And if they are released based on prisoner swaps or released like that, actually, their rights should be preserved and protected. Yes, I do agree with you, but only a small number of people are released. Prisons are full, actually, and all the parties are torturing. All the parties are criminals. I tell you clearly, actually, we have managed to release people, and they are completely paralyzed. And they were tortured by both parties to the conflict, and therefore we have seen people who have court rulings to be released actually in their cases. For example, in Sana'a, we have had court rulings from the penal court saying that this person, for example, should be released. And the head of the prisoners committee says, no, he will not be released because, why, we say, and he says because his name was part of the lists in the Stockholm negotiations. We know that in the Stockholm negotiations, actually, they have written lists of all the prisoners because they thought that they will be released. And that was a mistake, actually, because these people were not released, and now they are part of the lists for prisoners exchange. And in some of the cases, actually, there are court rulings that they should be released, and they are not being released. Why? Because their names are added to the lists of the prisoners, and they want to swap them. So, so there are lists from both parties. Today we are changing the paradigm, and that's why we say, Sheikh Naji, that this is a crime against the abductees, and we are talking about all the parties actually and what they did. In the beginning of this session, actually, we had someone who was detained by the STC forces, and then another person was detained by the government in Taiz, and then the last one was detained by the Houthis. And all these parties actually, they abduct people and they torture them. We have Maha Awad. Please, Maha. We apologize to Sheikh Naji because of the sake of time. I'd like to greet all of you and thank you for this session. I'd like to thank the Association of the Mothers of the Abductees for the work that you do. Actually, you are keeping this file and this cause alive. And even if there are certain negotiations about the prisoners and the abductees now, but sadly, the lists are not comprehensive. And this is a human file and is being used by different parties for their political and military gains. And this is a very sad fact. And the approach is fragmented here because as stated by Mr. Naji, everyone is focusing on the lists of the prisoners and the detainees. And these lists are not exhaustive, actually. There are many people who are not part of these lists. So these lists are not comprehensive, and they do not include all the prisoners and the detainees who should be released. And therefore, we have to include other prisoners. And this is a human file, and it is part of the political negotiations, but it is not addressed as a whole. It is addressed as a fragmented issue, and they focus on certain aspects of it, and there are no demands to release all the prisoners. Actually, many prisoners are there for years and years, and they are forgotten. So I'd like to thank you for the work that you are doing. And I'd like to greet all those who spoke, actually, the victims of these crimes. And they have presented actually some very painful stories. But I'd like to thank you because what you say will result in more solidarity with you and with others actually who are suffering behind bars. I also wanted to raise another point. Well, we wanted to ask about the government actually and what they are doing in relation to the prisoners and the detainees. There are prisoners and detainees in areas under the control of the government. So who is managing this file? It's not the United Nations. And who is responsible for that actually? I believe that the United Nations have completely forgotten this file. I was counting on the Office of the High Commissioner actually to explore this file and to do something and to press the government actually to do something and to release these people because the government had obligations to protect human rights and they have good relations with the Office of the High Commissioner. But sadly, the Office of the High Commissioner is not saying anything about that. So who is talking about the prisoners and the detainees in the hands of the government, the different actors under the legitimate government? And it's not one party, it's not the STC only. It's not only the Marib or the Taiz prisons, it's all the actors actually, because all these parties, they have prisoners and they have detainees, and this is a human file, and it should not be addressed actually in a partial manner. And number two, the ex-detainees and the ex-prisoners should not be neglected, and care and support should be provided to them. So they had the courage to speak up and to bring up their cases. So we need to help them and to support them so they can raise their cases before international tribunals and so they can raise their cases at the international level. And if the Yemeni courts do not provide redress to them, they should be able actually to address international avenues. And here we need to support them and to provide them with the necessary legal aid. And number three, where are the women prisoners and detainees with the Houthis actually? Because for these women were detained under different charges and accusations, and these charges are false, and they are not part of the negotiations. They are civilians, all of them are civilians, and for the civilians, actually, it is the responsibility of the different parties under the international humanitarian law. But for women, women should receive special treatment, and they need to be treated fairly. Thank you, Maha. And well, the position of our association is that the issues of the prisoners and the abductees is an issue that should not be part of the political negotiations. These are people, civilians who are abducted and who are disappeared. And for the issue of the women abducted by the Houthis, we wanted one of them to join us actually, but for reasons beyond her control, she couldn't join us. We wanted to hear from her about her detention in the central prison in Sana'a by the Houthis. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. And the session was about violations to which the statute of limitations does not apply. And we all call for accountability, for preventing impunity, and for providing redress and justice to the victims, and to have all those who are still in prison and in detention centers released. So we will continue to demand for the rights of these people and this group of people. And this includes the suffering of their family members. So we hope that you continue working with us on these issues, and thank you for your attendance.